To those who gave birth this year to their first child, we celebrate with you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, we anticipate with you. To those who place children up for adoption, we commend you for your selfless love. To those who feel heartache and distance with your children, we stand with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day, we are amazed by you. To those who have warm relationships with your children, we admire you. To those who lost a child this year or those who experienced a failed pregnancy, we grieve with you. To those who will have empty nests in the upcoming year, we rejoice with you. To those who are foster and adoptive mothers, we need you. To those who step-parent, we see you loving well. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, we believe with you. To those who lost their mothers this year, we remember with you. To the mothers in each unique season, you are beautiful. You are loved. You are the best of us. Thank you.
Well, happy Mother's Day, Loft family. I have to tell you that a few months ago when I said yes to preaching on Mother's Day, I did not expect that we would be doing this virtually. I can't believe how fast life has changed. And I also didn't expect that I would be doing this with so much gray hair. Yes, a lot of gray hair, more gray hair probably than I've ever preached with. And now if you have tuned in today and you were wondering if every time a Loft preacher preaches, they're going to be lamenting about their hair, then I assure you, yes, we are, because we are a very vain bunch and we're lamenting about our hair. Now, I'm desperate enough that I am plucking gray hair out in the mirror, but I'm not desperate enough that I'm going to show up here in a cowboy hat yet. And something else I didn't expect is that I, as the mother of twin boys who are in the 4th grade, would end up being in charge of their educational experience. Now, I do not want to insult my friends who are legitimate homeschoolers and who have been doing a wonderful job with their children's education. I don't want to insult them by calling what we're doing at the Riley House homeschooling, because it is not that. You know, we knew a long time ago that I was not going to be the mom to homeschool children. One of the main concerns is that I'm terrible at math. And when I tell you that I'm terrible at math, I am so bad at math, and I hate it, that we had to enroll in the help of a math tutor for my boys in the 1st grade. So we have had a math teacher since the 1st grade. That is the grade in which math became too complicated for mom to help with homework. And so Miss Diane, our wonderful, lovely math tutor, has been with us for 3 years now, and she is wonderful and is a lifesaver. So what we decided to do in this season where I need to actually help with schoolwork is that we would take a look at the assignments for the day, because there's usually 5 math assignments for the week, and I would do the ones with the boys that I felt like I've got this under control, and I would save the ones that I thought they needed help on or that mom needed help on for Tuesdays and Thursdays when we virtually tutor with her. So this plan, we put it in place pretty early, and so we printed out all the work, and so the boys and I did the ones. I was feeling pretty good about myself, and so we log on virtually with Miss Diane, and I go to escape to my bedroom to do my own schoolwork, and one of my boys comes to me and says, "Hey, Mom, Miss Diane needs to talk to you." I was like, "Really?" She usually doesn't talk to me to the end. She's like, "No, she needs to talk to you now." So I go out and I sit down with her, and both of the boys look at me, start laughing, and go, "Mom, you got every single answer wrong on this worksheet that I did with the boys." And so Miss Diane said, "Maybe you should print out another one, and I'll just start from scratch on this one." So I print it out, and I come back, and I go to walk away, and Miss Diane goes, "Mom, nope, sit down right here." I was like, "What?" She's like, "No, you need to know how to do this. You need to sit here." So now I am also being tutored in 4th grade math. So there are a lot of things that my boys will learn from me, but I'm telling you, math is not going to be one of them. But we'd all say that we learn things from our mothers, right? You can probably think about lessons that you've learned from your mom. And some of you would probably say that those are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned in your life. And others of you might say, "You know what? Some of the most painful and difficult lessons that I've learned in my life." But for better or for worse, moms shape us, and we learn from them. So today, in honor of Mother's Day, what I want to do is I want to talk about a mother whose life is in the Bible and what we can learn from her. You know, her life is going to teach us about God's ability to engage with us in our difficult moments. Now, it's quite remarkable, I think, that we have her story captured in such detail. Well, one, she's a female, and less than 10% of the recorded names in the Old Testament are women. And she's not from Hebrew descent, meaning that she's an outsider. She's not someone who would become God's chosen people. She's firmly on the outside. And she's really an aside in the main narrative that we see in the great patriarch and matriarch of our faith, Abraham and Sarah. And honestly, she reveals some pretty serious character flaws in them. But perhaps maybe that's why this mother's legacy continues to live on and teach us even today. She reveals to us who God is. Now, she had a difficult life and a hard path to motherhood, but her story of hope teaches us that God sees us and God hears us and that he promises to always be with us. Now, her name is Hagar, and her story is found in Genesis chapter 16 and Genesis chapter 21. So if you have a Bible near you and you want to grab it, you can go ahead and do that, or open up the app on your phone if you want to follow along. So when we meet Hagar in Genesis 16, God has established a covenant with Abram. Now, you're going to hear back and forth in these verses, you're going to hear Abram and Sarai and Abraham and Sarah. Those are the same people. And God promises Abram that he'll bring him to a land where he will make a great nation and he will have many descendants. But Abraham and his wife Sarah have some obstacles to believing this promise. One, they were aging. They were pretty old at this point. Two, Sarah was barren. She is one of the women in the Bible whose story of infertility that we get in detail. And then three, God was really taking too long to fulfill his promises. They had been waiting for a long time. He was slow. So Sarah and Abram do what I think most of us do when we feel like God's not getting the job done in the right amount of time and we're tired of waiting and our situation seems impossible, and they decide to take matters into their own hands. And that's where we'll pick up in Genesis 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." And Abram agreed to do what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarah, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. And when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarah said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and I." "Your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think best." And then Sarah mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. So Hagar appears on the scene as an Egyptian slave, most likely acquired in Sarah and Abram's little disobedient detour towards Egypt. And when Sarah decided that her problems required intervention, she used Hagar to get what she wanted. And then when things didn't go her way, she mistreated her. Now, Abram, he refused to get involved. He washed his hands of the whole situation. And so feeling she had no other choice, Hagar runs away. And she finds herself in the desert, used, abused, betrayed, a single pregnant woman trying to outrun her difficult circumstances, no doubt feeling alone and feeling hopeless. And the first truth about God that Hagar's story teaches us is that God sees us. Read verse 7. "The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to shore. And he said, 'Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?' Then the angel of the Lord told her, 'Go back to your mistress and submit to her.' The angel added, 'I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count.'" Verse 7 says that the angel of the Lord found Hagar. Later in Exodus 3, the Lord and the angel of the Lord are presented to us as being one and the same. And so the messenger was God himself, the unfathomable God to whom no eye had seen and no mind could conceive. The ruler of heaven and earth seeks and finds Hagar, the runaway slave, a victim of oppression and hurt. And when he finds her, I want you to notice something that he does. He says, Hagar, slave of Sarai. At this point in the story, no one had addressed her by her name. Now, the narrator tells us her name, but Sarah and Abram, when they discuss her, argue about her, abuse her, decide her fate, decide that she is going to be mistreated, they never use her name. They only refer to her as slave. But God, when he finds her, when he pursues her, when he looks for her, he uses her name and he calls her Hagar. And as a slave, I bet Hagar felt most of her life feeling unknown, only valued for what purpose she could serve. And when God calls her name, he validates her identity. She is not unknown to him. He knows her. He knows her story. He knows her struggle and her pain. She matters to him. And he shows his concern, but then he tells her to return to a difficult situation. Now, much has been written in trying to understand why God would command Hagar to go back to a possible abusive situation. And unfortunately, this story has been used to defend those who would advise a victim to return to abuse. And so I want to make sure that I say today that this is not a blanket command. This is a tough part of Scripture to wrestle with, but we can't pretend it's not there. But I do want to draw your attention to verse 8 because I think that that's key to understanding Hagar's situation. God asked Hagar, "Where are you going and where did you come from?" And I believe he's asking her to think about her two options. You see, Hagar faces two undesirable, equally hard choices. She can return and potentially suffer further mistreatment, or she can brave the long road through the wilderness with desert in every direction. It is unlikely that a young, pregnant, runaway slave will survive the journey through the wilds of Canaan. And knowing this, God doesn't abandon Hagar in the wilderness to succumb to the elements or wild animals or worse, the hands of other travelers. No, instead, he offers her a promise with the instruction to return to Abram and Sarai's household. He says, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." God makes a radical promise to Hagar, to a woman, to a slave. He echoes the promise that he made to Abram. It's a promise that contains hope for the future. And I want you to hear this today. Sometimes God doesn't remove us from difficult situations. He uses those difficult situations to bless us. Sometimes our obedience to stay in a difficult circumstances is how God will bless us and use it for our future. And Hagar, who has this encounter with the living God, who is turned from a woman who is lost and hopeless and alone and in danger to a woman who God gave a promise and a future and a hope. She responds in verse 13, she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees me." For she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." Hagar most likely spent her whole life feeling unseen. And she becomes the only person to name God in the Old Testament. And she calls him this beautiful name, El Rohi, the God who sees. And God's names in the Bible, they're more than just titles. They reveal something about his character. That's why they're given to us, the many names. And El Rohi is a name that's reflective of her experience and the care and the value and the attentiveness he felt in her presence. He saw her pain. He saw her distress. He saw her situation. He saw her need. And I wonder if you have ever asked yourself, because I have asked myself, out of billions of people in the world, does God even know that I exist? And Hagar's story teaches us that he does, that he sees us when no one else does. Charles Spurgeon preached it this way: God sees you. He sees you as much if there were nobody else in the world for him to look at. That if I have as many people there are here to look at, of course my attention would be divided, but the infinite mind of God is able to grasp 1,000,000 objects at one, and yet to set itself as much upon one as if there were nothing else but that one, so that you today are looked at by God as much as if throughout space were there not another creature but yourself. God does really look at you without division of sight, as if you were the only being his hands ever made. And if I think about it, motherhood is one of the places where I feel most unseen sometimes. I think about the long, sleepless nights with crying babies, exhausted, or cleaning up the mess from sick kids with stomach bugs in the middle of the night, or the endless planning and carrying and not even going to the restroom by yourself for years that comes with being a mom. And at the end of the day, it's a pretty hard and thankless job. I want you to know today, mamas listening, God sees you. He sees you putting in the work. He sees you caring for your family. He sees you getting it all done and being faithful to love and discipline and care for your children. And those out there today who are struggling because they're longing to be a mom and it hasn't happened and you're waiting, God sees you. For those of you who are hurting today because you miss your mom and you wish that you could be with her, or maybe you're grieving the relationship with your mom that you never had, or maybe the mom you never even knew, God sees you. The stepmamas, caring for the babies, caring for the children, holding the family together, God sees you. For single parents out there who are both mom and dad sometimes, shouldering more than the fair share of responsibility, loving and caring for kids, God sees you. For those who would struggle with mental illness or chronic illness, it can sometimes feel invisible or like no one else can understand. God sees you. And for those who are afraid, who are facing financial failure, or who have lost their jobs or aren't sure about the future, God sees you. He is El Rohi. Now, we don't know what life was like for Hagar when she returned. She does go back. And maybe the threat of running away and taking the child who they believed would fulfill the promise changed things for her. Or maybe her son Ishmael's birth just changed the dynamics between them. But we do know that in the years following her son Ishmael's birth, that God visited Sarah and Abraham again. And this time he makes a promise not only to Abram, but also to Sarah that they would have a biological child. And he changes their names, and then miracle of all miracles, elderly Sarah, who was most likely in her upper 90s at this point, conceives, and a long-awaited son arrives. Isaac is born. And we pick up the story in Genesis chapter 21, verse 8. The child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking, and said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God said, "Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." And early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy, and she went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes and then went off and sat down about a bow shot away, for she thought, "I cannot watch the boy die." And as she sat there, she began to sob. And the second truth about God that Hagar's story teaches us is that God hears our cries. So this time when Hagar leaves, it's not on her own accord to escape a bad situation. No, this time she's tossed out. She's rejected. She's thrown out, and again, her fate has been in the hand of others. She's lost the hope of a good future for Ishmael. She's lost the security of the future that Ishmael would have provided for her as Abraham's son. She's penniless, homeless. She has nowhere to go, and it seems like the God she trusted, the God who saw her, the one who made her a promise, had abandoned her. When she found herself in the wilderness, a place of vulnerability and lostness and despair, when she had gone as far as she could, and most likely Ishmael was faint and exhausted and could go no farther, Hagar did what she thought was going to be the last act of protection for a son that she dearly loved. She places her crying child in a bush, keeping him from the harsh sun, and she waits. And surrounded by the desert, with death silently stealing upon her son and her, she lifts her voice and she weeps. And the God who saw her becomes the God who heard her. God hears her cries. In 17, it says, God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. Hey, God has heard the boy crying as he lies there." Now, I'm the mom of twins, and I tell you, since the moment the boys were born, I've been able to distinguish their cries. They can be in another room, and they can cry, and I can know which child is crying. And also, I can distinguish the type of cry. I know they're, oh my goodness, my child is legitimately hurt and needs his mom, is in pain. I can know that cry from the cry that's like, I'm just a little whiny today. I can tell the cries of heartache from the cries of anger. I can be on a playground with a lot of other moms, and we can all be talking, no one really watching our children. We can hear a child cry, stop talking for a minute, listen to the sound, and without even turning around, know which mom needs to go take care of their child. There is an innate and intimate connection between a child's cry and the ears of their loving parent. And when Hagar begins to cry and Ishmael begins to cry and those cries pass over heaven's threshold to the intimate ears of God, he answers. He heard the cries of Hagar and he responds that he is there and to not be afraid, he is with them. And the third truth that Hagar's story teaches us is this, is that God is always with us. He says, lift the boy up, take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. So when I was in my 20s, my husband and I had been married just a couple of years, and we decided that it was time to have children. Now, I would love to tell you that we decided for noble reasons, but we decided because everybody else was, and we didn't really want to be left out. And so we decided it was time. We're the age, everybody else is doing it, so let's try to have kids. And honestly, I thought that it was going to be pretty easy. I immediately bought I'm the Big Sister t-shirts for our dogs and prepared for the moment where we would tell our family and have, big announcement. And it didn't work out that way. A year went by with no success, and so we were referred to a fertility specialist. And we ran a ton of tests and started that process and sat across from a doctor who said, we're going to try and we're going to pursue every option that you guys want to try, but we need to be realistic that this might not happen for you. And so that started this cycle of injections and hormones and pills and timing and everything else that comes from infertility. It is a emotional, spiritual, physical battle. There's this cycle that happens in the month where you find out that the answer is no, and you plunge into the depths of depression, but you can't stay there very long because you have to rally back up to try again for the next month almost immediately. And it's relentless. And month after month after month, procedure, drugs, everything that the doctor said, this might work, it didn't. And I found myself back in the same place, crumpled on the bathroom floor, with the answer being no. And in the middle of all of that, we got the word that my husband's job was moving us to Houston, where we know not one soul in a city of 7 million, not one. And because of the condition of my heart and the move and the fact that we were moving so far away from friends and family, I really thought that that was the end of the story. But we moved here, we settled in, and a few months later, we found our first church, we joined a Sunday school class. I started feeling better, kind of emotionally gearing back up, and we decided that we would try again. And so we go to see a fertility specialist here in Houston, and we sit across the desk from him. We tell him our story. He looks at our medical history, and he says, I'm going to get you pregnant on the first month. And guess what? He did. He got me pregnant on the very first month. And not only did he get me pregnant on the first month, he got me pregnant with triplets. Yep. Triplets, 3 babies. I wish that you would have seen the look on my husband's face when they found 1, 2, 3 babies that day. I thought he was going to pass out. But we were excited, just going from the idea of you may never have children again to we're going to have 3. We're like, bring it on. We're ready. As many as you want to give us. And so, my pregnancy, though, is high risk. Triplets are high risk. Multiple births are high risk. And I am very small, and so we were trying to pack on the weight and all of the things to make it so that I could carry them easier, and we saw high-risk doctors all the time, but the pregnancy proceeded pretty well, surprisingly, all the way. We found out that we were having 2 boys and a girl, Beckett, Eli, and Ruby. And we were pretty excited about that fact, made tons of jokes about how she was never going to get a date because she had so many brothers. Anyway, we were very excited. And then close to the end, we were doing an anatomy scan with the high-risk doctor, and she checked out Beckett, and everything was fine. And she checked out Eli, and everything was fine. And then I could tell from the look on the technician's face that something was wrong. And the technician said, I'll be right back. I've got to go get the doctor. And the doctor comes back, and I already knew. I was already sobbing. She said, I'm so sorry. Your daughter is gone. There's no heartbeat today. And I struggled. And they were very kind, but they wanted to be very honest with us that most of the time in this situation, what happens if you were having a single baby is that your body then triggers to go into labor. And so there was a very real risk that I would go into labor or develop blood clots. And if I had just 1 baby, we would have gone ahead and delivered, but we couldn't do that because the other 2 weren't quite ready. And so I was faced with a very real possibility that I could lose all 3. And in the days that followed, I didn't do well at all. I would pace the house at night, unable to sleep. I didn't go to work. I would find myself in the middle of the night in the nursery because it was already done, 2 boys and a girl, and I would just curl up in a blanket in the glider, and I would just rock, and I would just cry, and I would just sob. And in those nights, I had what I would consider my only real crisis of faith since coming to know Jesus and follow him. You see, at that point, I'd only been following Jesus for real, intentionally, for a few years, but I had made a lot of life change and transformation. I had left behind partying. I had new friends. I was part of a church. I was in a Sunday school class. I was serving in children's ministry. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. I was doing all the things right. And in my mind, God wasn't really holding up his end of the bargain to me. That I could lose all these kids when I had done everything right. I was following him to the best of my abilities. And I just remember crying and being broken and just saying, I don't know how you could do this to me. This is not what I signed up for when I signed up to be a Christian. Like, you are supposed to take care of these things and protect these kids. This is not how it's supposed to go. And I remember just lashing out and saying, you have failed me. And I've taken one kid. I don't even know why you wouldn't take the other two at this point. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And in the way that he does, I don't really know how to explain it, but I knew what he wanted to say to me in response. He said, Luann, I lost my son too. I gave him for you. And it was in those moments where I felt the reality of God's pain in a way that I had never fully realized before, that here I am feeling all this pain about a child that I am not going to get to raise or to have, and God willingly gave over his son to a terrible death. What kind of love is that would willingly give their child for me, the worst of sinners? And the gospel, it just became so real to me that night that being a Christian is not about God removing tragedies from my life or keeping me from the things that will happen because of a broken world and a broken body. But the reality and the good news of the gospel is that I never go through those things alone. He is always with me. And I was at my worst that night. I was at the bottom. I was in the wilderness. I was crying. I was sobbing in despair. And God saw me and he heard me. And he opened my eyes to see that he had already given me the son that he promised, just like he gave Hagar the son that he promised her. And that no matter what happened from that day forward, whether or not I got to be a mom, he would be with me. And he was. He was there in the hospital when we said hello to our boys and goodbye to our daughter. And he was there with me in all the days since then that I've lived without her. God tells Hagar to lift up the boy. Some translations say he says, rise and take Ishmael, the son of promise, by the hand. And that's what we do in difficult times as well. We get up and we keep going because there is nothing that we cannot face when we are holding the hand of the son of the promise. Hagar's story is remarkable, but you know what? Yours is too. And whatever difficult situation you're facing right now, or you will face in the future, you can trust that God sees you, and he knows you, and he hears you, and he will always be with you. Let me pray. God, we thank you for the son of promise. We thank you that you willingly handed over your son for us. And God, because of him, we can face anything in this life that would come our way. God, I want to pray now for those who today is hard. God, I pray that you would comfort those who are grieving. I pray that you would grant new life and miracles to those who are waiting and longing to become a parent. I pray that you would mend and heal relationships, God, that are broken. And then, God, I want to recognize that today is also a day of celebration. God, where we celebrate mothers and we celebrate the role that they have in our lives. And we thank you for the way that moms continue to teach us and shape our futures, God, and shape future generations. We thank you for Hagar's story and what it teaches us about who you are. God, thank you that you are a God that sees us. Thank you that you are a God that hears us. Thank you that you are a God that is always with us. In Jesus' name, amen.